Are plans to plant a new woodland in memory of people who died with COVID a case of the right trees planted in the wrong place? Opponents claim the proposals could mean some of the best land in Carmarthenshire could be lost as part of the scheme. Welsh Government says the land near Llangadog on the banks of the River Towy in fact contains a large percentage of wetlands and brushwood, but also says that in order to fulfil its plans to create 43,000 hectares of new woodland by 2030, it is inevitable that some land will have to change from agricultural use to woodland. Rachel Evans, the director of the Countryside Alliance in Wales, lives locally and explained why she objects to the plans.
The land that they've chosen, I think, circa around 94 hectares, and some of it, I think, is ideal for tree planting. But there is another larger proportion of that land which has been rented to farmers in the locality on a grazing and mowing licence, which has basically been growing our food. There's nothing wrong with part of the site then, but the whole site and the fact that they're getting ready to plant on productive farmland is worrying, because what we're doing then is taking agricultural land out of production and it will never be returned. It will change the landscape there forever.
But I think I'm right in saying that the aim of this is to plant 60,000 trees on 3 sites, this being one. Now that's a finite ambition, yet you have equated it to the threat posed by huge corporations buying up whole farms for planting.
Well, the site at Brown Hill, whilst the intention's there for planting trees in memory of those lost to COVID, and we have all experienced the loss of loved ones through COVID. I don't think it's really escaped anybody in any community. The sentiment behind that is absolutely lovely. It's a great idea, but the very fact that they've also taken on extra sort of productive farmland is a concern. And Brown Hill is the tip of the iceberg here, because what I'm finding this week is that I've had contact from members and the general public to tell me that there are other pieces of land being purchased by Welsh Government. I hear talk of some near Brechfa, Llanfynydd area. I had a member of mine from Anglesey on the phone yesterday morning to tell me that 30 acres of productive farmland had been sold for 350,000 to Natural Resources Wales, and that land was to be used for planting. I have absolutely no qualms at all with planting trees. I firmly believe that there is room for tree planting in Wales. There is absolutely room. But the issue that we have as the Countryside Alliance is the fact that they're taking up agricultural land, and the effect of this will be felt in the rural communities for years to come.
Well, now the Welsh Government says that NRW, which has bought this land on the banks of the Towy, have concentrated on getting land that's close to the edges of Welsh Government woodland estate and have actually attempted to avoid valuable agricultural land. So surely if that's the approach they're taking, that's reasonable, isn't it?
Well, the only woodland estate I can think of under NRW management would be a minimum of 3 miles, which would be the Coedshorn Forestry or the Cilgwyn Forestry, for example, or if you want to go further north to Llandyfri within sort of 7 or 8 miles, then there would be more going up towards the Sugarloaf, for example. But this is certainly not on the fringes of any NRW managed woodland. The only woodland in close proximity to Brown Hill is the Abermarlais woodland, which I believe is firmly under private ownership and not under the ownership of NRW. I can understand why they've chosen Brown Hill as a site. I mean, the A40 is a busy road. I assume they're going to reduce the speed limit on that road because the access to the site is on a particular fast stretch of road. It is scrubland, and some of that scrubland is protected, I believe, and needs to be kept that way as well. But of course, the issue that we have is that there are 3 parcels of land within that 94 hectares that could be left to be farmed to create food for the nation. We're talking about woodland creation here in memory of those who have sadly died through COVID, and we absolutely commend the sentiment behind that. But we also need to think that through this global pandemic, whilst the supermarket shelves have been empty, our local butchers' counters have been full. And the reason why the people from Llangadog to Llandyfri and Llandailo and the surrounding community that they are focusing on here, the reason that we haven't been without food on the counter is because of our local farmers. It's because of our butchers sourcing local produce. And I think we cannot favour forestry over farming. There is room for both. Down at Brown Hill, what I would suggest is possibly to rent the productive land to a young farmer or a new entrant so that they can then be supported through their farming enterprise. And it's an ideal opportunity for Welsh Government to then show the nation and to show farmers how farming can work alongside tree planting. There is room for everybody down there at Brown Hill. Not enough to make a living out of farming, obviously, but there's certainly scope there for those 3 fields to be able to be offered, for example, to a local farmer or a young entrant with stipulations attached. So, let's say, for example, no mowing before the 23rd of June. They need to be hay meadows, and perhaps they'd be happier with hay meadows rather than silage fields, or for them to be constantly grazed, but perhaps a limitation on what you're grazing there. I think there's so much scope here for this particular site to be a demonstration site, then, if you like, on how the farming community can be linked in to tree planting.
Rachel Evans from the Countryside Alliance.